The Unstable SMP is a scripted Minecraft server for storytelling, and many people don't know the story, so I'm here to help. A player called Spoke finds out about illegal items and glitches such as diamond armor with all enchantments, and tells a player called Jamato. Spoke dupes millions of shulkers full of these items and hides them in a massive prison vault under a pyramid, but a player called Wembu spies on him. Spoke then relocates and hides his shulkers in the End Dimension's pillars. In the End Dimension, Wembu respawns the Ender Dragon to delete Spoke's shulkers, and Wembu fights Spoke, while Parrot independently finds the chunk suppressors Spoke made and builds a doomsday lag machine that deletes terrain. He even crashed the server a few times. Wembu gets hired as a guardian by Spoke, and Wembu shows off his orbital cannon to him.
Nice job, team.
But Wembu gets sick of his job and breaks into the prison where all the illegal items are kept. He fights guards like Tyrad, Rion, Sharkills, and Squiddo in a 3v1, and even kills Tyrad. He then manages to steal over 10 million duped items, while Spoke rages about it. Wembu then hides his stolen goodies away, but Spoke finds it and re-steals his own items back from Wembu. He then re-dupes everything, upgrades the vault with more traps, and debates its destruction with Jamato, who rejoins warily while Parrot raids a Spoke vault for illegal items. Parrot then starts his own void-based duping operation. Wembu hides in a chunk suppressor and decides to do a little trolling, so he uses his orbital cannon on Spoke. Prince Zam builds a mega prison for glitchers, so Parrot infiltrates it. And while he's at it, he frees some people from a chunk ban, including some of Spoke's henchmen, who expose Zam's empire's weakness. Wembu builds a highly guarded mega city and recruits some people, and declares it the safest place on the server. While Wembu is chilling in his civilization, Parrot is being hunted down by Zam's deadliest goons, including Clown Pierce, Mugum, and Fairy MC. Spoke bankrupts Zam's empire by crashing the stock market, and Wembu finishes it off with some lag machines and orbital nukes, fully destroying the Prince Zam empire. Some guy called Ashwag decides he wants power, so he starts his invisible mafia. Let me explain what the mafia is. When every new player joins the Unstable SMP, they get forced to throw an ender pearl into a stasis chamber, and they get put in armor and are permanently invisible. If they get found out, their stasis gets pulled, and they get teleported to the Mafia HQ and get killed. It rises in power, and Ashwag leads some stealth raids on farms and civilizations, and also imprisons Wembu and Zam. They escape, but Parrot and some other people get trapped by the Mafia in a prison called Proton. Parrot escapes, frees Jumper Who, Rackrap, Wi-Fi's Darupchu, Eggchan, and a guy called Dean. And it turns out some Mafia member called Canadian was secretly helping them. Parrot decides to fight back against the Mafia and creates District 13 with Wi-Fi's, Dean, and a few others. By the way, Dean dies. Parrot then builds an end dimension civilization unreachable by the Mafia, but he gets found by this guy called Redunes, so he blows up his civilization. Spoke gets raided and goes undercover in the Mafia as it grows in power and eventually becomes the server's new most powerful faction. Wembu reunites with Eggchan and decides he wants to not be bad at the game, so he tracks down Mainappear and masters PvP with him. Is Parrot okay? No. He basically becomes a slave to Redune's city called Capital City. Parrot finds out that there are a whole lot of players trapped in Capital City, and he decides to free them all, including this one guy called Lettuce K, who will be important later. But he can't save everyone, and his friend Luigi dies. But before he passes away, tells Parrot about the Farlands. Spoke and Wembu decide to be beasts and demolish the Mafia HQ, with Wembu fighting Clown, but Clown escaping. And Spoke finds Ashwag's Ender Pearl stasis out in the Farlands. Ashwag then aura farms with Spoke, and Spoke decides not to kill him, but exile him forever from the server. Post-mafia, Eggchan decides to build an empire. While Egg is chilling, Parrot is being hunted by the world's best player, a redstone genius, bounty hunters, and a hacker. Holy moly, Parrot does not catch a break. He survives because of course he does, while Spoke is being hunted by a team called Bat. Wembu explores deserted abandoned civilizations and loots them all, and a new face arrives. Flamefrags joins and becomes the immortal demon and kills bounty hunters and dominates PvP tournaments. Wembu also gets hunted by a guy called Will for a little bit. Will just stole all the Mafia's riches after it ended, so Will is pretty much the Jeff Bezos of Unstable SMP. Wembu signs up for a tournament and loses to Flamefrags, and Parrot hunts an invisible player who turns out to be Wi-Fi's, his friend who went missing. Wi-Fi's then traps Parrot in a massive prison called Paragon. Parrot escapes Wi-Fi's twisted prison, and Wi-Fi's dies to his own trap. Wembu and Eggchan get bored and decide to explore beyond the fartherlands, and Wembu now possesses 100 orbital cannons and bullies a few people with them, but Egg gets trapped in the end. A new team forms. It's called the Law, and it's led by Lettuce K. Wembu gets sick of being one of the most powerful players and decides to fake his death and go under a new identity, the Invisible Knight. He then decides to join his enemy Jaden's pirate team anonymously, and they explore the Great Sea for some buried treasure. And while all of this is going on, Parrot is looking for some ancient treasure of his own with his new friend Theo. They manage to find this treasure and dish it out to some new people at Capital City from earlier, which got rebuilt. Fast forward a few weeks, and Wembu got found out to be the Invisible Knight by Parrot, who now lives at Capital City, and Egg is still trapped in the end. Wembu, with his orbitals, bully the Law, and Wembu and Flamefrags have a beef on who is the strongest, with Wembu winning his duel against Flame, and thus becoming the most powerful, but ended up getting captured by the Law because he ran out of resources. And quick side note, the Law had grown exponentially. Wembu ended up getting put in prison, along with Bubble, Fanta, and Zam, whose mom is kind of homeless. Lettuce decides to run for king, and uses Wembu as a prop to get him votes. Parrot joins the election, and knows that Lettuce is becoming evil. While Parrot thinks, Lettuce takes over the End Dimension from Minute Tech, the End Guardian. The king's election is rigged by Lettuce K, who frames Parrot for killing a lawman. Wembu manages to escape prison, and Flamefrags became wanted. A player called Leo Wook becomes the leader of Bat, who teams with Law and sends 1,000 players after Spoke, who survives. Wembu gets hunted by the Law, gets thrown back in prison, escapes again, saves Egg from the End and flees to the Great Sea. Flamefrags decides he was bad at the game and went on a whole anime training arc, getting trained by the best players. Wembu finds Jaden in the Great Sea and they squash their beef and team up. Spoke also goes insane and thinks that his best friend gets killed and nearly destroys the whole server. Lettuce is lying to the public by stating that Wembu is still in prison and sends his lawmen after him and Jaden. Wembu, Jaden, and Lettuce all fight, and Wembu flees with Egg. Parrot is still running for king and is in the top 4, but one night some assassins broke in and killed a candidate. This was planned by Lettuce to kill Parrot, and since it didn't work, Lettuce announces the Purge, where candidates are allowed to kill each other for their votes. Parrot gets all the votes and says to Lettuce, "Hey, your plan didn't work. I'm going to expose you to the public." To which Lettuce replies, "Parrot is a war criminal. I'm the new temporary leader." And the election is held on pause while Lettuce goes insane. Wembu realizes he can't defeat the Law without his orbital cannons, so he goes with Egg back to the Farlands to get them. On his way back, he runs into Spoke, Flame, Parrot, and some others and team up to create the Temu version of Avengers. They then head back to Parrot's District 13, where it turns out Parrot created a mini-army of about 20 players. They then confront Lettuce at the Northern Council and say very politely, "We will kill you." The fight starts, with Wembu dropping nukes, Parrot chilling on a tower, Theo bombing people, and Flame macing people. Fun fact, it's 2,500 lawmen versus 32 people. In the end, the Temu Avengers win, but Wembu ends up deciding to spare Lettuce's life, instead putting him in prison. The Temu Avengers then all part ways. That's the story so far. Bye.